about Brian May, okay? The other day, when I was doing my live album, I totally spaced it. I mean, I put it in the credits on the bottom, but I totally spaced Live Killers and Wembley '86. Um, I was looking on YouTube, and if you get a chance, watch the Live Aid 1985 concert with Freddie Mercury and Queen. I know Zeppelin was there, like Plant and Page were there, and they did like Stairway, and like Robert Plant was wearing some weird, like poppy. He looked like a poppy college kid, and he had his hands on his hips while he was singing Stairway. And then Queen came out. It was like 6:41 p.m. on like July 14th or whatever the date was. But Freddie just walks out on stage. Brian May walks out on stage. You got John Deacon, and then you got Andy Taylor. You got Andy Taylor from Duran Duran. He came out too. The Taylor Boys. You got Roger Taylor. And of course, they come out and they all walk out on stage. Now it's Wembley Arena. The crowd is like the size of a small country, and they're going berserk. And these guys just walk out like it's nothing, and they start noodling with their instruments and plugging in and just, kind of making a little noise here and there. Tap, tap. It would have been cool if Tom Hanks would have come out and started doing a check of the microphones. Check one, sibilance, check one. And then, Freddie Mercury just walks over and he just sits down and he just starts playing. And they go right into Bohemian Rhapsody. And then you watch Brian May, who's standing there playing a guitar that his father made for him. People don't know that. I mean, some people do, obviously, if you're a Brian May fan. But, dude, his father made his guitar. How cool is that? Now, I know years later, Guild got with Brian May and they copied his guitar and they put it out to where people could buy it and stuff. But that guitar that he plays, the original one, was made by his father. And, that's ultimate. But Brian May, man, he just stands up there. He's cool as anything. He's super quiet. He just kind of smiles. Back in the day, he was wearing the kimono robes and stuff. But who wasn't? He just rocked you. This guy had such a spectrum of music. You listen to, of course, We Will Rock You and We Are the Champions. Now, these guys are English, but yet those are American anthems. American anthems sung by English guys. Who knew? You listen to the depth of his playing, stuff like Night at the Opera, where he plays 39, where it's just lighthearted acoustic stuff. And then you hear off Sheer Heart Attack, you're Stone Cold Crazy. That's one step away from thrash metal. Get Down, Make Love. Get Down, Make Love, from News of the World, or even Sheer Heart Attack on News of the World. Flick of the Wrist, from Sheer Heart Attack, Now, don't get me wrong, Sheer Heart Attack was a song on News of the World, with the album with the picture with the robot where he crushed all the guys in Queen. They're all smashed. Yeah. All the way back to the original Queen with Seven Seas of Rye on it and stuff. They did a lot of experimental stuff too, My Fairy King and Jesus. There's a song called Jesus on the first Queen album. Look it up because it's there. Ogre Battle, Now, my first introduction to Queen was was probably The Game in the 80s, in the early 80s, because I was just a kid, and I remember listening to Another One Bites the Dust on the radio, because they played it on the radio, on AM radio, constantly over and over again. Flash Gordon, and I know that movie Ted brought back Flash Gordon, but more of the actor like Sam Rockwell than the actual soundtrack. But dude, the soundtrack to Flash Gordon was awesome. It had Queen and Brian May got to do a lot of cool little doodles and stuff on there. If you want to listen to that, it's definitely cool to listen to. Day at the Races, Tie Your Mother Down. Come on. The Millionaire Waltz. Keep Yourself Alive. Keep yourself alive. Keep yourself alive. You know, jazz. You know, Fat Bottom Girls and Bicycle Race. Dude, Brian May went from this to this to this to this to this to this, and then he came back and he rocked you. He rocked you to the point where you were just like, whoa, you know, you listen to like Brighton Rock and you're just like, oh, okay. Wow. Now, you know, some of the later Queen, it was alright, you know, when they started getting into, you know, like The Works, you know, and they did Radio Gaga and stuff like that. And, you know, the Hot Jazz, or was it Hot Jazz? No, it was Hot Space. The Hot Space album where they did Body Language, and they did Under Pressure with David Bowie. I mean, that was the best song on that whole album, but, you know, that kind of fell over a little smooth. But I gotta tell you, like, A Kind of Magic, which is basically the soundtrack to, like, Highlander, where they do, like, Princes of the Universe, Who Wants to Live Forever. That's some deep shit. Can I say that? I can and I will because it's Brian May. Brian May. Dude, I'm in love with my car. I mean, that was Roger Taylor, but Brian May was playing in the background, right? I'm in love with my car. Got a feel for my automobile. Even The Miracle, that one album where all their faces are smashed together and they each have one eye. Brian May got to do a little blurb at the end of that called Chinese Torture, and that was pretty cool, man. Or, you know, dude, like, even I Want It All off that album. The rest of that album, it was alright. It was kind of, you know, it was 1989. People weren't really into Queen. You know, it was before Wayne's World, of course, so everybody makes fun of Wayne's World, like even Paul Stanley. Ooh, Paul, you're so cool. You know, because Kiss Meets the Phantom of the Park is fucking opera. Wayne's World resurrected the career of Queen. You know, they were singing Bohemian Rhapsody in the car in the first Wayne's World movie, and dude, people freaked out. People that inspired an entire generation to pick up an album by Queen, and you know, to the point where, like, you know, Queen's record company, Hollywood Records, like, went and remastered all their stuff and put it all out, and I ate that stuff up, dude. They had some great songs. Phenomenal songs. I'm going to say phenomenal because it's my favorite word. And amazing. Amazing and phenomenal. That's Brian May. If you made one mistake this week and sat down and listened to a bunch of Brian May, then you had a pretty good week. So definitely listen to Brian May. He's one of the rock gods. Real quick, I'm gonna smash like a bunch of people in real quick, and I know I'll probably piss some people off, but I don't really care. Let's talk about some tandems. We already talked about Angus and Malcolm. Let's talk about Glenn Tipton and KK Downing. They've been rocking you for how long now? I mean, how long has Judas Priest been kicking you in the face? Since 1974, Rock-a-Rolla, you know, which we really won't mention. Although it did have nothing good on it. I'm just kidding. No, I didn't really. It wasn't that great of an album. But then, you know, into Victim of the Changes, where we had the Ripper. In the dark alley streets is where we'll probably meet. Underneath the gas lamp, where the air is cold and damp. I'm a nasty surprise. I'm a devil in disguise. I'm a footstep at night. I'm a sin of the night. Oh, hear my warning. Anyway, Glenn Tipton, KK Downing, you know, obviously they're influential, and I'm sure they've influenced like a bunch of guitar players over the years. You know, were they the greatest players ever? No. You know, no. If you want to learn, you know, Breaking the Law, it's pretty basic. I can grab my guitar over here and show you real quick. came out with hooks, man. And that's what it was all about, breaking the law and screaming for vengeance, you know. Screaming for vengeance. You know, obviously they did Island of Domination and Tyrant, you know. And they did You've Got Another Thing Coming and Take These Chains and Electric Eye and The Hellion and all that stuff. KK Downing and Glenn Tipton, one of the great rock tandems of all time. And then on the other hand, we have Dave Murray and Adrian Smith from Iron Maiden. Now, a couple years later into the game, we added Yannick Gears. I think that's how you pronounce his name. And, you know, Adrian Smith was gone for so long that when he came back and when Bruce Dickinson rejoined Iron Maiden, they decided, why not? Let's have 3 guitar players because we need to. You definitely need to have 3 guitar players in Iron Maiden, right? Of course. But like the other day, you know, I was getting ready for the show and I was just kind of gearing up. And the one thing I love to do is just pop on my iPod and throw on an album and just listen to it in its entirety. And so I, of course, threw on Number of the Beast, you know, just to get ready to rock out. And Dave Murray and Adrian Smith blow me away every single time, dude. When you put on, and it starts off with Invaders, and it's just like, Invaders! You know, and it just goes into, and then they bring it down a little bit with Children of the Damned. He's watching like whatever, you know, watch his eyes burn you away. Black holes in his golden stare. God knows he wants to go home. The Prisoner, and then 22 Acacia Avenue, you know. And then you get into the Number of the Beast. Woe to thee, O earth and sea, for the devil sends the beast with wrath, because he knows the time is short. Let him who hath understanding reckon the number of the beast, for it is a human number. Its number is 666. Forget about it, man. Forget about it. Run to the hills. Gangland. Hallowed be thy name. You listen to that album and you know why Dave Murray, Adrian Smith are one of the great rock tandems of all time. Those guys, ever since Killers, when, of course, Adrian Smith came into the band after Dennis Stratton got the hell out, they just started with Killers, and they even into the later Iron Maiden albums where people started to lose interest in them a little bit. Dude, they were super consistent, even when the lyrics were, you know, Bring Your Daughter to the Slaughter, really? Is that your favorite song? But, you know, you listen even on, you know, like Peace of Mind, Revelations, you know, and Flight of Icarus, and, you know, The Trooper. Is The Trooper it's part of my soul. Part of my soul. Where does, you know, Dave Murray end and Adrian Smith begin? You know, even on Power Slave, you know, Back to the Village, and some of those songs that people are kind of underrated, you know, because people didn't really listen to the second side of albums, you know, too much, because all the really great stuff was on the first side, like 2 Minutes to Midnight. Mariner was clocking in at 13 and almost 13 and change, you know, and that was what not to do if a bird shits on you, you know. But anyways, just, dude, even into the later Maiden stuff, right before Bruce left for the first time, listen to like Fear of the Dark, you know, where they Afraid to Shoot Strangers. Dude, that song is amazing. Now, they had some really interesting like chord changes and progression changes where they would just be playing that thing, and then they would just go the opposite direction, like that. I don't know if they were musically, you know, trained, or they just, you know, flying by the seat of their pants. And then, of course, the whole time, like, Mr. Steve Harris is sitting there going, you know. But, dude, consistency. That is Dave Murray and Adrian Smith. And now that other guy, Yannick. Chris DeGarmo and Michael Wilton. I don't think I've ever run into anybody that's just said, dude, I'm such a huge Michael Wilton fan. But then again, like, dude, I love Queensryche, but you kind of, like, forget about them because, you know, Jeff's voice kind of overshadows the entire band. But, dude, those guys were playing phenomenal stuff, even from the first EP all the way into, like, you know, Rage for Order, where they were playing, like, you know, Killing Words and Chemical Youth. We are rebellion! Or Supremes, London, you know, come on, dude, listen to The Warning, you know, the enforcer, Take Hold of the Flame, Child of Fire, Lady Wore Black off the first album, you know, Promised Land, all the way up till, you know, Chris bailed out of the band on Here in the Now Frontier, which, you know, that has some cool songs on it too, like Sign of the Times. Sign of the Times! And, of course, Empire. Well, we already talked about Empire and I already Empire, but Best That I Can, Jet City Woman, Another Rainy Night, Silent Lucidity. You know, there's even a rockin' cover of that on the remaster where they do Scarborough Fair from Simon and Garfunkel. And, of course, Operation Mindcrime, one of my favorite albums. And that, dude, from beginning to Anarchy X to the end, Eyes of a Stranger, everything in the middle of that rocked you. And it was Chris DeGarmo and Michael Wilton, man. They were tight, and they were playing just these intricate things, and it was just amazing to listen to. Now, I think they're underrated, so you need to go out right now and pick up a copy of Operation Mindcrime, put it in, slap on number 7, Sweet Sister Mary, kill her. That's all you have to do. Kill Mary? She's a risk. And get the priest as well. Now, don't go out and kill Sister Mary. It's just an album. Jesus Christ. Everybody takes everything literally nowadays.
And get the priest as well.
The other ones I want to talk about. What about Rudy Shanker and now you could say Uli John Roth, but I think Uli should be standing alone, and for a good reason. But I want to say Rudy Matthias more Scorpions. You know, that was a great tandem. You know, No One Like You and Dynamite. I'm Dynamite. You know, and just like all the really cool Scorpion stuff. The Scorpions weren't like hardcore. You know, they're not like. You know, they're like Judas Priest, man. They're not going to play anything that's just going to blow your mind out of the water. But at the same time, they're going to play stuff that's just going to stick in your head. Blackout? You give me all I need. Ooh, that was terrible. What about, you know, Winds of Change? Down to Gorky Park on the winds of changes. Bad Boys Running Riot. Have you ever heard of a little song called Rock You Like a Hurricane? Because I think the rest of the world has. I'm Coming Home. Big City Nights. I mean, come on, man. Another piece of meat? The Zoo? Wah, wah, wah. I already did Holiday, so I'm not going to sing that one again. Love Drive. I think that was Michael Schenker, though. But, you know, does it matter? It's all the same, right? Because it's the freaking Scorpions, and they're awesome, you know? And those two guys consistently... dude, even Sting of the Tail, when you listen to, like, Raised on Rock on Sting of the Tail from 2010, those guys are still rocking, so... And then you have Uli. And the thing with Uli is Uli was playing stuff back in the day. You know, if you listen to, like, In Trance... I'm in a trance! Was it In Trance? Well, In Trance had some great stuff. Steam Rock Fever from Taken by Force. And He's a Woman, She's a Man, you know. Sails of Charon. Everybody's favorite Polar Nights from Virgin Killer, right? Pictured Life. Even the stuff from like Fly to the Rainbow, which had Speedy's coming and Fly to the Rainbow, of course. Dude, Yuli was one of those guys that kind of like people forget about him, but you got to understand something. There was a whole generation of guitar players that love Yuli John Roth. Yngwie Malmsteen. Yeah, he's a big Yuli fan, dude. The Scorpions were a lot more popular in Europe than they were here in America for their first 5 albums or so. And there's a lot of guitar players out there that understand that Yuli did a lot of things for hard rock and heavy metal just by some of the stuff he was playing. And Yuli left and he started playing like really cool stuff from like the Metamorphosis from Revolving Four Seasons, 2003. You want to listen to that where he does the Winter Ice, Wind and Fire, and that kind of stuff where he's playing his 9-octave guitar. Dude, transcendental sky guitar is what we're talking about here. I mean, Yuli definitely could. He could play some stuff like Amadeus and the Heart of Chopin. I met Yuli a bunch of times. He's such a supreme guy. He's such a nice dude. And he's totally like, he's always wearing the headband. He's got the long hair. He's kind of getting a little thin up top, but he's still, he looks like the ultimate, like, little hippie dude. But he's definitely awesome. So, you gotta give a nod to Yuli. And then the other one, what about Neil Schon from Journey? Did you forget him? The problem with Neil Schon is like, I've been to the NAMM show. I've been going to the NAMM show back in the late 80s. And I will tell you, I've met everybody, like all kinds of rock stars and stuff. And without a doubt, the only person that was ever mean to me, was ever like a total butthole, was Neil Schon from Journey. And in fact, I remember me and Neil and Ronnie James Dio were at the NAMM show. It was like 1989, I want to say.
For a long, long time.
That was 89 maybe. 88, 89, 90. I mean, it was one of those years. And I remember Ronnie was talking to Neil, and we were all standing there, and Ronnie signed my NAMM show program, and Ronnie was a cool dude. Dude, you could hang out with him and talk to him for hours. He was super cool. I have like a bunch of pictures with him, and where he's just sitting around. He was throwing back drinks and just hanging out. And I remember like he was talking to Neil and stuff, and I think he was asking him about like a guitar player. If Neil knew anybody that could play guitar, because I think Ronnie had just lost. Was it Craig Goldie? I'm not sure. I'd have to look it up, but and they were kind of chatting, and I was kind of involved because I was standing there, and and I remember like Neil, like Ronnie handed him my program, and Neil like wouldn't sign it. He was just standing there holding it, and finally Ronnie was like, "Hey Neil, like sign the dude's program." He's like, "Oh, okay," and he does, and he gives it to me, and then like right in the middle of the conversation, like he walked off. This is a true story. Unfortunately, Ronnie's, gone, and he can't corroborate it, and I don't know if Neil would remember that because he's kind of a douche, but, dude, he just walked away, and I remember looking at Ronnie, and I was like, wow, and Ronnie looked at me, and this is true, this is a true story. Ronnie Dio goes, Neil's kind of a dick, isn't he? And I was like, dude, you're Ronnie James Dio. Like, I'm hanging out with you, and you're super cool. Like, dude, he's the guitar player for Journey. He's not Steve Perry. Dude, like, Journey was kind of a chick band because, they sang all those love songs and stuff, and the chickies really loved Journey. In fact, like, I think that was the first school dance in 7th grade was, they basically put on like Escape, and we just danced with girls to Escape because it had every cool chick song on there. And I love Journey, don't get me wrong, but like the average fan at that time, if they ran into Neil Schon on the street, they probably wouldn't be like, "Oh my God, it's Neil Schon." They would be like, I don't know. Now, if it was Steve Perry, they'd freak out, because it was Steve Perry. But Neil Schon, he started back in Santana. He had the big giant fro. I mean, if you watch the video of Black Magic Woman, it's like Greg Rowley and Neil Schon. Neil's got the big fro. He's got the big, Chico and the Man headband going on. He's just like, and I don't know if he had a kimono on, because they all had kimonos back in the 70s. But that's where Journey started, and Neil and Greg took off and they made Journey, and the first 3 Journey albums were like this avant-garde kind of left-wing jazzy kind of weird Kahootek kind of stuff that no one ever listened to, Journey Next and stuff like that. I mean, I have that stuff, but I don't really listen to it. I don't think anybody really does. But then, they ended up getting Steve Perry in the band. They ended up getting another drummer. I think they got Ansley Dunsbar for the first album with Steve Perry when that was Infinity, and of course, dude, 1978, Infinity, they did Lights and Feeling That Way. Feeling that way too. Wheel in the Sky.
The wheel in the sky keeps on turning.
And it was such a departure from Kahootek, from, Journey from 1975. And then, of course, they went into, like, Evolution and Departure, and the hits kept coming, with this new guy at the helm. But, in the meantime, people don't realize, dude, listen to Neil Schon. He's a great guitar player. Stone in Love off Escape, and, he's a rocker, dude. He's definitely a great guitar player. He's just kind of a douche, but he's definitely worth mentioning. Dude, he's just because he's a douche. Richie Blackmore's a douche, I mean, Ronnie James Dio would tell you Richie Blackmore was a douche. He plays like the dulcimer now, right? I think we mentioned that before, right? Doesn't he play the dulcimer at like Renaissance fairs? Oh, fair maiden, wouldst thou toucheth my dulcimer? He's got the little mustache. Richie Blackmore is old enough to be my father, and he's got this pitch black, hair and pitch black, handlebar mustache. And his girlfriend's like 20 years old or whatever. I mean, she's not 20, but like whatever. Hey, kudos, Richie. Kudos. Quit rock and roll and play Blackmore Night. Later on, I saw Neil again, and I remember, this is back when you didn't have digital cameras. They were filmed, so you couldn't, this is way before cell phones, obviously. But I remember Neil was talking to somebody, and I was very polite. I'm not a rude person. I waited. I walked up, and I very politely said, hey, Neil, can I get a picture with you? Because, when I meet rock stars, that's what I like to do, is just like get my picture taken with them, to just have kind of a little snapshot. Of course, it's a snapshot, duh. But, just to have a remembrance of that point. And I remember he goes, sure, and he kept talking to his friends, which I was cool. I stood there patiently, and then finally after like 15 minutes, he goes, okay, let's do it. And so my buddy goes over and he grabs my camera, and we take this picture. Now, like I said, this is before digital cameras, so, we go home from the NAMM show. I turn all my pictures into, like, Price Club at the time, and waited, like, 2 weeks, to get my pictures back. And I remember, like, the 2 weeks go by, and, like, I go and get my pictures from Price Club, and I'm going through all my pictures, and I find my picture with Neil Schon, and he's, like, standing there like this. And I remember, like, I was super pissed. I was like, wow, not only did he walk away from me and Ronnie James Dio, he did, I'll put the picture, I'll post a picture on here, but, like, what a douche, man. So now every year, Neil Schon is nobody now. The guy's living in his, the backseat of his car or something, like, because, Journey's coming out with a whole bunch of albums, with that little Filipino singer, dude. Here's a hint. Tim Ripper Owens, the little Filipino dude from Journey. Hey, just a real quick, shout out. It's not a shout out. A real quick, just like, one, Tim Ripper Owens, you're not Rob Halford. No, you're not. And little Filipino dude, I don't even know your name. I mean, that's kind of messed up, but you're not Steve Perry. And it's kind of funny that the last Journey album, which was how long ago, where they were doing Journey songs, and that became the thing, is like, hey, our singer left, so let's go troll the bars and try and find tribute bands, and we'll find a new singer. But bottom line is, guys, it's still not the original singer, and that's what your fans want. The guy's a great singer. Tim Ripper Owens is amazing, dude. That guy's got pipes like he could shatter walls and break down the ozone layer, but he's not Rob Halford. And they figured that out. 2 albums in, they figured that, oh wait, you're not Rob Halford. You're kicked out of the band because our fans want Rob Halford. Our fans want Steve Perry. But I still see Neil at the NAMM show. He's always, he's usually, I think he plays Paul Reed Smith guitars, and I've seen him a couple times. And, Neil's had some plastic surgery. I'm not starting any rumors or anything, but he's way older than me, and he looks like crap. His skin is so tight, it's like, whoa, is that Joan Rivers or is that Neil Schon from Journey? Anyways, I always yell out to him.
He smells like stale catfish.
But I still gotta give him kudos, dude. The guy is a great guitar player.
Of an aging welfare patient.
He was a douche. As a human being, he was a douche. Just let that ride. That would be James Hetfield and Kirk Hammett from Metallica, and then the guitar player I want to talk about would be Mr. Dave Mustaine.
Hello, me. Meet the real me.
I know you're going, well, isn't Kirk Hammett a guitar god? No, not really. If Kirk Hammett wrote more music, I would say yeah, but he doesn't. I mean, James writes all the music. That's why James Hetfield is worth $170 million and Kirk Hammett's worth $40 million. There's a huge difference because James and Lars wrote all the music for Metallica, basically, at least all the good stuff. We don't know about the Lou Reed stuff. If Lou Reed calls you to do an album, you do it. Anyways, James Hetfield, yeah, maybe James does need to be on my guitar god list. I mean, you listen to the evolution of James, and you listen to, especially when Mustaine's influence was finally negated from the band, you started listening to some of the compositions that were opening up on, Master of Puppets, and even on, a little bit on Ride the Lightning, but more into Master of Puppets and then into And Justice for All. James started just blossoming out as a guitar player. He's a great guitar player, but him and Kirk together, those guys are awesome. And I told my story when I saw him back in '86 when they opened for Ozzy on the Master of Puppets tour, and I remember James Hetfield coming out, and he was frightening, dude. He had the white Explorer, it said "Kill Bon Jovi" on the head, and he came out with his flowing mane of blonde hair, and he was just like, rah! He was scary. You were just like, whoa. And just Kirk was just kind of the, he had the fro going on. He was just kind of the little rocker, kind of, jamming out with his, I think he had a Gibson Flying V, but then together, dude, those guys, where does Kirk begin and where does James begin? And that's the greatest thing. When you can't tell who's playing, that's magic right there. So, and then Dave Mustaine, which brings us to Dave Mustaine. And okay, so you're saying, well, you're not really putting Hetfield on the list, by himself. You're putting him with Kirk Hammett. But Dave Mustaine, He wrote like most of the songs on the first Metallica album, Kill 'Em All. So I'm gonna put Dave in a category by himself, just because of the fact of his body of work. Dave got kicked out of Metallica, and ever since then, Metallica's kind of overshadowed him. If you look at his body of work in Megadeth, Dave was pissed off. Dave wanted to destroy Metallica. He wanted to step on their heads and kick them in the back and, do whatever he wanted to do. But so Dave set out to, create Megadeth and basically to be louder, faster, ruder, stronger, whatever. Do more drugs, maybe? Who knows? I mean, but if you listen to the first one, Killing Is My Business and Business Is Good, Rattlehead and Looking Down the Cross, and, he does Mechanics, which is basically, Mechanics was on the No Life Till Leather demo with Metallica that Mustaine was on, and I have it, and it's trippy to listen to because, you hear some different kind of versions of some of their early stuff, like Hit the Lights and stuff. But Mechanics was on there, and Mechanics is basically the Four Horsemen with different lyrics. And really, Four Horsemen is superior because they're better lyrics. Mechanics is kind of stupid. It's about cars. They do it for their lives. And they're working on cars. Oh yeah, I'm working on cars. Anyway. Killing Is My Business and Business Is Good. It's basically a song about the Punisher from Marvel Comics. Skull Beneath the Skin, Rattlehead. Those are some great songs. The album wasn't very polished, but Dave was playing at 1,000 miles an hour, and then you get into like Peace Sells, Who's Buying, and he does Devil's Island, which is funny because on my first one, when I was talking about Rust in Peace, and I said Rust in Peace had Devil's Island on it, which we all know is on Peace Sells. And that is my fault because it's called like scripting, and I don't script. I just kind of go by the seat of my pants. And if you want to sit up here and remember 1,000 songs from 1,000 different albums at the same time, well, good luck to you. But I usually in post-production fix the inconsistencies. But I remember I was watching that and I was like, those songs aren't on Rust in Peace. They're on friggin' Peace Sells, but Who's Buying? But I still need to beg the question: is The Conjuring, which of course is on Peace Sells and not on Rust in Peace, your favorite Megadeth song? Is it? In your heart, are you saying, man, I love The Conjuring? No. Anyways, but Wake Up Dead, Peace Sells, of course. Bad Omen, I Ain't Superstitious. Those were cool songs. Obviously there was a big leap. You still had So Far, So Good, So What. But in this time, Dave was very conflicted. He was very embattled. He was doing heroin and all kinds of stuff. If you read his book, which is a great read because Dave, he doesn't hold anything back. He's sitting there telling you a story about how he's duking himself because he did so much heroin and stuff. He doesn't really varnish the truth. He just lets it lay out there all raw and swollen and gross. But even though it's So Far, So Good, So What, they had Into the Lungs of Hell, Set the World Afire. My favorite song on that album is Hook and Mouth, M is for fighting, R is for red. In battles they shed, A we elect him, E we inject him in the land of the free and the home of the brave. D for the dying, oh, you're of a child. M is for money, you know what that spells, or whatever the fuck he says. M is for manure, that means. It spells out freedom, means nothing to me as long as there's a PMRC, which obviously is dated because PMRC was, that little group led by Tipper Gore that threw the little parent advisory stickers on the front of the album covers, which metal and rock, dude, they need to thank Tipper Gore because, dude, if you slap that little parent advisory label on the front of your album, it sold like an extra 100,000 copies because kids were like, oh my god, this has something totally awesome on it. obviously, Dave was experimenting with a lot of drugs, but he was still coming out with great stuff. In My Darkest Hour, which he claims was written about Cliff Burton, even though if you listen to the lyrics, it's kind of... If it was for Cliff Burton, then Dave and Cliff had a really strange relationship. That's all I'm saying. I'm putting it out there. Anyways, that was kind of the cutoff. And then after Dave got a new guitar player on every album to play with him, he ended up with Marty Friedman from like Cacophony, and Jason Becker. And they busted out Rust in Peace, which Rust in Peace is a great album, but it's just not my favorite album. Had Holy Wars, of course, great song. Hangar 18. People were like, oh, Hangar 18 is such a great song. It's alright. I love Tornado of Souls. That's a great song. Lucretia, which is all... But what I was trying to talk about, and I know I mentioned The Conjuring, which was on the wrong album, but what I was talking about was there's a little space in the middle of that. Some people view this as Megadeth's perfect album, and Five Magics is your favorite song. Poison Was the Cure is your favorite song of all time. Every Megadeth song in the world that was ever written, ever produced, and ever put out there and packaged up for you, you choose Poison Was the Cure as your favorite song of all time. No, you didn't. Take No Prisoners was cool. Take no prisoners! Take no shit! Dave was still angry, but he was clean. And there's a difference between clean Dave and Dave shooting heroin between his toes. Even on Hidden Treasures, which was kind of like that one-off album that had a bunch of cool stuff that they did from some soundtracks and stuff. No More Mr. Nice Guy from Alice Cooper. Go to Hell, that's a good song. Angry Again, 99 Ways to Die. That was on like a Beavis and Butthead movie, wasn't it, or something? Diadems, that was in God, I want to say it was in the Tales from the Crypt movie. Was that it? But anyways, those are some good songs. And I made my own compilation because I threw out Schools Out because he covered the Alice Cooper song, but it was just Dave and Marty Friedman, I think. Also, he did Never Say Die as a cover from Black Sabbath, and that's a good song. Go out and find it. Also, Paranoid was on that album as well. But, that was just kind of a one-off and stuff. And I love, of course, Countdown, because Countdown has so many great songs. Architecture of Aggression. Great nations built on the bones of the blood and straw, mud and sweat. You know the world when your enemies praise your architecture of aggression. That was weird. Totally screwed that up. Skin of My Teeth, Symphony of Destruction, of course. Sweating Bullets. Hello, me. It's me again. And you watch the video and you're just like, okay, Dave, Captive Honor. Ain't no honor. Psychotron. Foreclosure of a Dream. Even on into Cryptic Writings and stuff. And then Marty Friedman started to freak out kind of, and I think his last album was Risk, but Use the Man, I'll Get Even, She-Wolf. And you know what? She-Wolf, dude, She-Wolf is awesome. Mother of all that is evil. Her lips the poisonous venom. I'm talking about Dave singing, but I'm also talking about Dave playing, and he had so many great songs that were just... the cool thing about Dave is, and I don't know that James Hetfield may have learned a lot of stuff from him, because James came out with, riffs that you remembered. Of course, and like I said before, the all-time great was Tony Iommi, because you always remembered those riffs, you always remembered Tony Iommi riffs. I don't even know what song that was. You'd see right through distorted eyes, you have to learn. A little Sabbath Bloody Sabbath, right? But Dave, even on into I love Euthanasia. People hate Euthanasia. They think that Euthanasia was sellout album and Megadeth started to get turn Metallica and stuff. But dude, Reckoning Day. If you don't like Reckoning Day, wow, then you have issues. Blood of Heroes. Blood of Heroes. Yeah, Never Die. Elysian Fields. A Tula Mine. You know, the thing with Megadeth was they never came out with Saint Anger. They never recorded an album with Lou Reed. So, you know, I tend to like more Megadeth songs, and I think Dave is an accomplished guitar player, and I think he's influential. So, even, you know, World Needs a Hero had some good songs. Motorcycle, 1,000 Times Goodbye. The System Has Failed. You know, dude, that had like Mice and Men. I love that song. Truth Be Told. You know, Kick the Chair, Scorpion, you know, even 13. Now, their last album, Super Collider, I didn't like Super Collider just because of the lyrics. And like I said before, you can be musically awesome, but if your lyrics are cheesy and crappy, I'm not going to like it. And that was the problem with Super Collider. Musically, it sounded great, but lyrically, it sounded like Dave handed the reins over to like Don Dokken or something. He was rhyming fire and desire just like one too many times, so... but that album before that, 13, now I know they were trying to get 13 songs on it, so they had to, you know, dig in and throw New World Order and Millennium of the Blind on it. Whatever. You know, but like Public Enemy #1, I love that song. Guns, Drugs, and Money. Yeah, you listen today, you get to speak Spanish on it. It's pretty cool. And then the song Black Swan, that was a cool song. And even 13. You know, that was a great song. There was some filler here and there. You know, Fastlane and Wrecker, you know. I missed Endgame. I totally skipped over Endgame. The thing with Endgame, though, was it was a cool album, and, like, you know, it had some rockin' songs. But it was kind of unmemorable. It wasn't bad. It was just like, you know, there was just songs on there, you know, it's 44 minutes, your favorite song. It's a cool song. It's about the, you know, the gunfight in the streets and in LA when, you know, AK-47s and AR-15s where those guys were robbing a bank and they decided to go head to head with the cops. But, you know, it had Head Crusher, Endgame, Bite the Hand. But, you know, there wasn't a lot of songs on there that you were like, oh, that's my favorite song. No, not really. And then even though I kind of skipped over Risk, I got to go back to Risk for just a second because Risk had two songs that I really liked. It had Prince of Darkness. Prince of Darkness is awesome. It's like, it's about Satan. How more metal could you be writing a song about Satan? Prince of Darkness is eternally one of the like dark points of Megadeth. And that album, a lot of people didn't like that album. It was like Marty Friedman's last effort, and then he had like a nervous breakdown and freaked out, and he was like laying on the couch, and he wouldn't go out on stage and stuff, and they had to ditch him from the band. But it also had Breadline too. It had Crush 'Em. You know, I think that was on a video game or something. Not really my favorite song, but Breadline was a cool song. You know, it's written about like people, you know, down and out. Anyways, Dave Mustaine definitely has to be mentioned because, dude, he had Gears of War. I'm all over the place on albums, you know, all over the place. Because it's hard to remember, like, you know, if you go in chronological order, I guess I could write it down. But I kind of like that freedom of just kind of flying by the seat of my pants. And I hope you guys enjoy it too. But if you don't, you can write in and I'll, you know, sit down and structure it. And then we'll all be, you know, right as rain. But Dave Mustaine, definitely one of the great rockers of all time and definitely one of the great guitar players. So if you don't think he's not responsible for most of the really good Metallica stuff in the early years, you know, keep lying to yourself. But I think James Hetfield did listen up. He did learn a lot, and then James, in his own right, became a great songwriter. So, you know, we win both ways. But, you know, just to throw it out there with Dave, you know, I know Dave has had Metallica overshadow his life, and you got to understand something, Dave. Like, one, you never came out with Saint Anger, so you're one up on him. You know, Hetfield's worth like $170 million, and you're worth like 50. Really, once it gets to a certain point, does it even matter? Like, how much more money do you possibly need? You don't. So, rock and roll, I am looking forward to the new Megadeth album coming out pretty soon, and we'll see where we go from there. Hopefully it's not Super Collider Part 2, because I didn't really dig that album. But Dave Mustaine, yeah! Hey, another one I want to mention, and a lot of people I don't know if they'll agree with me or not, but I don't really care. Paul Gilbert.
Mr. Paul Gilbert on the guitar. That's
I saw Paul Gilbert play in the auditorium at the school across the street from my house, like years ago. He came into San Diego and he was doing a little symposium at Music used to be up the street from where I live, and then we all went down the hill and he went into the auditorium at the school and he gave us a little guitar clinic. And I'll tell you, if you've never seen Paul Gilbert play, first of all, the guy can play anything. In fact, he can play things that he shouldn't be able to play. I remember that day he played like the violin parts from Kansas, like Point of No Return, on his guitar. He played the violin parts. He did the fighting music from Star Trek. The dun 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 dun. It was hilarious. The thing about Paul Gilbert was he was a teacher at GIT, Guitar Institute of Technology, down there in Hollywood, California. MIT, GIT, MIT, Music Institute, Musicians Institute, MI. Whatever the fuck it was called. I can't remember. Anyways, Paul was a teacher at MI, like Musicians Institute, and I remember hearing, like, when he was in Racer X, and Racer X came out with a couple of albums. I think they were on Shrapnel too, and he was, he could play like 2,000 miles an hour, and he also had another guy in his band, because I guess when he was teaching at GIT at MI, he had this guy that used to come up to him and ask him to show him different parts and stuff, and he started getting really good, and he was like, wait a second, I should stop showing this guy stuff, because he's learning how to play all my stuff. And that was, of course, Bruce Boulez. And Bruce Boulez would start to play all the stuff that Paul was showing him, and he started getting too good, and Paul started worrying. So instead of stopping the lessons, he just had Bruce join his band. So, and Racer X was Bruce Boulez and John Alderetti and had Scott Ian. That's Scott Ian from fucking Anthrax. And Scott Travis from, he eventually ended up in Judas Priest, the drummer for Judas Priest. And it had, of course, Paul Gilbert. Anyways, Racer X was the latter years, Sunset Strip kind of band, and these guys were all phenomenal players. They just out of the the bass player, the two guitar players, and the drummer, they were at the top of their game. I don't think there was anybody on the Strip playing at that level, and they were amazing. And Paul, of course, they were playing crazy shows, and he also had some side projects going on. I remember a friend of mine, George, who went to my Nam Road Dog. I remember he went to MI, and they used to go see The Electric Fence, which was one of Paul Gilbert's side projects, where they used to do Black Sabbath songs and stuff, and wear big giant tinfoil crosses. And they used to say that they wrote all those songs, they just weren't very familiar with the copyright laws. But I have a thing from MI where Paul, he laid down a track and he said, I'm going to do one of my favorite solos from Jimmy Page, one of my favorite riffs from Black Sabbath, and I'll put it all together in a Spice Girls song. And I remember he did this Spice Girls song, did the solo during it, did the riff of I think it was Sweet Leaf, and then did the solo of Stairway to Heaven. This guy can play anything. He's just amazing to watch, and just seeing his love of guitar and his love of music, and then all his solo albums, Beehive Live and Get Out of My Yard and Alligator Farm, Burning Oregon, like all those albums, they have just little bits and pieces here and there, and you pick them up and you put them on and you say, wow, and he's really, really funny too. I mean, on Burning Oregon, he has a song called "I Am Satan," and if you get a chance,
1, 2,
definitely
3,
pop that
4,
on.
5, 6, 6, 6.
I am Satan, king of the underworld. I am Satan. You had to be there. Anyways, but Paul Gilbert definitely needs to be mentioned. He was in Mr. Big with Billy Sheehan. Did a lot of solo work on his own. He's just one of those shredder kids that kind of came after the fact, after Yngwie and all those other guys. And he actually just kind of topped everybody, anybody that had been before him, he kind of just topped them. You could tell this guy at one point in his life when he was a kid or whatever, or a teenager, locked himself in a room with a guitar and just played and played and played and played and played and played until his fingers almost fell off, because he's phenomenal. I saw a little snippet. You can look it up on YouTube. It was in Japan. It was him and Marty Friedman, from Megadeth fame and from Cacophony back in the old day with Jason Becker, and it's Paul and Marty, and they had their guitars, and they would pull like a bingo ball out of the spinner thing, and it would have a letter on it, and then they would play something from a band of that had that letter in the name. Like they'd pull out B and they'd be like, and then Paul's like Black Sabbath, and he played a Black Sabbath song, and then Marty would play like Boston or something. And just the amount of knowledge that those guys have in their heads, and to be able to just pull out these songs at random and just play them in their entirety, note for note. It's that kind of recall is something that doesn't come along every day. So wow, so definitely Paul Gilbert should be on the list. Don't want to forget Paul. We have 2 guitar players left. Now, one of them, I don't know if I should mention, because there's going to be a dividing line between hard rock and classic rock. And if you start edging into there now, I know I mentioned Jimmy Page, and people think Led Zeppelin's classic rock, but I think Led Zeppelin is more hard rock than classic rock. And now then you got, and I'm going to talk about him, is Pete Townshend from The Who. Now, I know people are like, what, is he an afterthought? No, Pete Townshend's not an afterthought. He changed the way rock guitar is played. I mean, he taught us the windmill, for Christ's sakes. He taught us the slide. Pete Townshend is an amazing performer. He's blown his ears out from standing in front of a wall of amplifiers for the last 50 years. He's played more riffs than we could ever possibly imagine, and The Who had a lot of great songs. Now, the problem is, like I said, they're kind of like classic rock, because then we get into the Rolling Stones and stuff like that, and you have to draw a dividing line. But I will mention Pete just because, there's a lot of people out there that love Pete Townshend, that love The Who. Even Pete, his solo albums were great. They had some great stuff on there. Mentioned a couple albums. Who's Next? It's probably my favorite Who album. Just because it had so many great songs on it. Baba O'Reilly on it, and then, of course, Behind Blue Eyes.
Behind Blue Eyes.
That album was amazing. I'm going to use the word amazing. Everybody's going to say, no, dude, Tommy. And Tommy, obviously, the rock opera. How can you not mention Tommy? It had Pinball Wizard on it. A great song. Quadrophenia. A lot of people forget about that album, and I don't know how. I mean, it was a double album, had a lot of great stuff on it. I think, didn't they do the movie and it had Sting in it or somebody, right? Right? Yeah, I think so. The Pumpkin, The Godfather, The Real Me, years later, Wasp covered that, The Real Me, but, Cut My Hair, I think Queensryche covered that too. Quadrophenia, it had so many great songs on it, and it's definitely a piece of rock history. Now, like I said, you know, it's borderline, so, you know, because they did Squeezebox.
Mama's got a squeeze box, she wears on
I don't
chest.
know if Squeezebox is
Daddy
metal.
comes home, he never gets no rest.
I know Who Are You's metal because they said, you know, there's the Who Are You, the regular version that they played, but every once in a while when I was a kid, KGB would play the Lost Verse mix every once in a blue moon. And I remember as a kid, because you would listen to it and you would listen to see if it was the right one. It was kind of like that Charlie Daniels song, Devil Went Down to Georgia. There was two versions. They played the part where he called him a son of a bitch, and then they played the other part where they called him a son of a gun. So it just depended on who the DJ was at the time. Same with Who Are You, because you all know what I'm talking about. Who are you? Who? And then he said, who the fuck are you? You know, there was that missing verse song. Then, you know, they added it back. There's a song called Eminence Front on It's Hard, which is a great song. Eminence Front, it's a rip-off, right? It's a rip-off. I think that's what the lyric was. Anyways, I'll have to look that up. Face dances, You Better You Bet stuff. Now, like I said before, they're pretty much classic rock, and I don't know if the Who can be considered hard rock and heavy metal, but you know, throw them in there. I'm sure some people will be like, yeah, they're totally hard rock. But then, dude, if you listen to some of the Who stuff, you're like, the Who Sell Out? I don't think that's metal. Is that hard rock? Is it? Heinz Baked Beans.
1, 2, 3, 4.
Armenia City in the Sky. Is that hard rock? I don't know if it is. It might be. Anyways, but I definitely had to mention him. And then, alright, guys, and you thought I'd forget, but you thought the very last guitar player that we need to talk about. And I know everybody's what they're thinking. They're thinking it's Satan, right? Is it? Is it Satan? No. Last time I checked with the Charlie Daniels Band, Satan was a fiddle player. He wasn't a guitar player. Now, he did buy Robert Johnson's soul when he rode down to the crossroads. Which made Robert Johnson so awesome that, you know, every guitar player from the 1960s like basically ripped him off. Jimmy Page! Oh, sorry. Anyways, there's a guy that in 1967 came out with an album called Are You Experienced? Yes, the one and only Jimi Hendrix. Now, I know people are going to say, well, shouldn't Jimmy be lumped in there with Iommi and Blackmore and Jimmy Page? You can lump him in. This is my list. Jimmy definitely was an innovator. Anybody with the body of work that really consisted of 3 albums, it's hard for me to say founding father, maybe, but still, with that, and I know over the years, there's been thousands, like Jimmy washing his hands and Jimmy flushing the toilet, and apparently Jimmy recorded like every second of, like, from when he was like 10 years old to when he passed away on my birthday when I was 1 year old. September 18th, 1970, Jimmy passed away. So it's been 44 years, and Jimmy's still around, and Jimmy still makes albums, apparently. He's like Tupac. Anyways, I'm sorry, take that back. I'm not going to compare Jimi Hendrix to Tupac, because Jimmy was a musician. I have a bunch of Jimmy stuff, you know, Cry of Love and Band of Gypsies and, you know, Rainbow Bridge. You know, those are great albums. But Are You Experienced, man? That actually should have been on my list of greatest albums, of my favorite greatest albums of all time. But Jimmy, is Jimmy hard rock? yes. I would consider Jimmy hard rock, but he's also classic rock, so he kind of falls in to the same vein as Pete Townsend, because you're like, is he hard rock? Was he, Purple Haze, is that hard rock? Manic Depression, Hey Joe, not really. I mean, he was a little bit more blues influenced, so, but he was amazing, from Purple Haze, Third Stone from the Sun, Fire, Foxy Lady,
Coming to get you.
Jimmy was definitely an innovator. Jimmy was like, he was like the Eddie Van Halen of the late '60s. That's what Jimmy was, and then Eddie was the Eddie Van Halen of the late '70s. The late '80s, who was the Eddie Van Halen? You decide. You can hash that around, but Jimmy definitely has to be mentioned. But like I said, really in actuality, aside from all the, like one-offs and stuff like that, I mean, really, Jimmy had 3 studio albums. He had Are You Experienced? Then again in 1967, same year, he had Axis Bold as Love, which, had Spanish Castle Magic on it, Little Wing, The 6 Was 9, Castles Made of Sand. Come on. Just amazing. And then, of course, he did Electric Ladyland in 1968. And that had Crosstown Traffic and Voodoo Child on it and Gypsy Eyes, Rainy Day Dream Away. Had 1983 on it, which was like 13 minutes and 35 seconds. It was freaking awesome. And, of course, it had All Along the Watchtower. All Along the Watchtower. Which has been one of the most covered songs of all time. Little Bob Dylan thrown in there. But the thing with Jimmy was, Jimmy had that style. He was left-handed. He played those upside-down Stratocasters, and, but here's the problem with Jimmy. One, Jimmy did a lot of drugs. He was great in the studio, but, dude, I've watched live performances of Jimmy, and dude, how many tabs of acid can you take at one point and still put on a good show? I remember back in the day, my friend Barry, who was a guitar player, for Christmas one year, somebody bought him a Jimi Hendrix VHS tape, and we watched it. And I can't remember. I think it was Jimmy at Monterey Pop. It was Jimmy somewhere. It looked like he was playing actually in a gym at a high school or something. But dude, he played like some cool stuff, but then he played like Purple Haze for like 15 minutes, and he was so frying. Of course, everybody in the audience was too, so I think that was the cool part about it. But dude, he just basically stood there like, and just kind of made some weird noises. Like, I can give Jacob a guitar and he can make some noises. So I know people are saying, dude, this is blasphemy, but it's not blasphemy. You got to be realistic. We can't look at our icons and then just put them in, rose tint their world and just stare at them in awe and think that every single little thing that they do is amazing, because it's not. Jimmy was a great player on album. And I'm sure in the early years before he was doing a bunch of drugs, like, he was amazing on stage too. Dude, we've all seen some of the stuff, and he was an innovator, dude. He would light his guitar on fire and stuff like that. But just like with a lot of guys from the late 60s and the early 70s, they were good on album, but live they were like, but everybody in the audience was fried out of their friggin' mind, so they were all, dude, it's so amazing. It's like, well, 7 tabs of acid will probably make anything seem amazing. Watch Woodstock. Some good performances and then some, wow, what the... But, Jimi Hendrix, man, he beat out Satan on the list, so how cool is that? You definitely gotta love what Jimmy did. And people will forever worship Hendrix, and, I know Yngwie is a huge he's a huge Jimi Hendrix fan. I'm going to say Yngwie one more time just for fun. Yngwie. Yngwie. But Jimmy definitely deserves to be on the list. I just, I wish he would have had more of a body of work to draw from, and he's like Slash. There I go with Guns N' Roses again. My Guns N' Roses rant is over, I swear to God. Axl's a douche, but I swear to God. Did Slash make the list? I'll put honorable mention for Slash. There's a couple of other guys too. Guthrie Govan from the Aristocats, listen to his solo album Erotic Cakes. That guy's a friggin' amazing. I've seen him a bunch of times play with the Aristocats, and those guys are all phenomenal musicians. I'm sure there's a bunch of people. Zakk Wylde, dude. Listen to his stuff that he does in Black Label Society and the stuff he did with Ozzy. He's great. Jakey Lee, the stuff he did in Badlands, and even his solo album, what was it called? Fine Pink Mist. If you want to check that out. A lot of people remember Jake when he was in Ozzy, when he was doing Bark at the Moon and stuff, which, dude, listen to Waiting for Darkness. You know what I'm going to start doing on my show? I'm going to start putting you a playlist of songs that you need to compile for the week and listen to. But definitely, Jakey Lee was a better guitar player than what Ozzy kind of made him out to be. And the unfortunate part about Jake is that he entered Ozzy's band right at the point where Ozzy was hair metal. And, but there's little bits and pieces of brilliance on those albums, and like I said, Waiting for Darkness is one of them, definitely listen to that, and, Thank God for the Bomb. You can listen to some of the acoustic stuff he was doing. He was kind of sneaking in there, they were still trying to stay all power chordy and Dokken, but, Jake's still a phenomenal player. But then listen to the stuff he did with Badlands, like Jade and stuff, and, Jake was awesome, so, he should be on the list. Ozzy had a lot of good guitar players over the years. And then, who else? Dimebag, I'm not a huge Pantera fan, just because Phil Anselmo, rubbed me raw. He just, I remember seeing them I saw him at Ozfest, and Dimebag came out, and he played, Tekken 5 with Tommy Lee, because Methods of Mayhem was on there, too. On the same tour, and I think Tommy won, but that was the week after Phil Anselmo had woken up from being dead, from ODing on heroin or something like that. It was just that guy, he just rubbed me wrong. And then all the idiots that listened to Pantera at the show just kind of rubbed me wrong too, because they were all starting a riot, trying to kill each other, and I thought that was kind of lame. I was going to a concert to watch the show and be amazed and not get my head kicked in. But some people like that crap, and fight the power. You want to go start a mosh pit? That's cool. Go start a mosh pit. But dude, when you're actually running through the crowd, punching people in the face and stuff, that was a bunch of bullshit. So, but Dime was definitely a great guitar player, and it's tragic the way that he ended. Just. Nobody can even possibly imagine something like that happening at a show, but and then who else? Who else do we have on our list that we totally forgot and totally spaced? John 5. John 5 got some great stuff. He listens to the album The Devil Knows My Name. He does Welcome to the Jungle. His Art of Malice album. He's like Capriati on that Devil May Know My Name. And he has Eric Johnson. And Eric Johnson should be on the list too, because Eric Johnson's phenomenal, but he's not really a hard rock guitar player, so I'm not putting Eric on the list. It's not the phenomenal guitar player list, it's the hard rock and heavy metal greats. But John 5, yeah, man, the stuff he's done with Zombie and stuff, some great stuff. And I'm sure there's a bunch of people out there that going, oh, we didn't mention my favorite guitar player who was. So that's my list of guitar gods. So, take it or leave it. But that's my list. And like I said, and I always continue to say, music is very personal. And everybody has an opinion. But that's my list. It's always a pleasure to talk to you guys. I know I talk way too long every single time, but I love talking about music, and it's hard to stop. So until we meet again, everybody stay metal. Yeah!